Hello and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'll be talking about Season 6, Episode 15, The Beard. Hey everyone. How is everyone out there? I hope you guys are doing well. I'm doing all right. I am actually on the road. I'm recording this on the road, which I've never done before. I feel very podcastery. I feel like most, like legit podcasters have had to do shows on the road. So I'm feeling very legit to quit. Sorry, guys. I always age myself, and I think this was record time for me aging myself. I just made an MC Hammer reference. Forgive me. Anyway, I am in Moab, Utah at the moment. We just, as a family, decided, let's take a little trip. So we just hopped in the car, made a reservation at a hotel, and here we are in Utah for about 3 days. And yeah, we love it. Utah is an easy drive. It's a gorgeous drive from Colorado, literally driving through the Rocky Mountains. And Moab is absolutely beautiful. If you've never been, I highly recommend it. It's just so picturesque, and I'm looking out the window of my hotel room right now, and yeah, I just can't even believe the view. It's incredible. Really, really cool town as well. The kids and I just walked around for a bit in the downtown, which we're very familiar with. This is probably, as a family, our 6th or 7th time coming to Moab. My husband comes here all the time. He is a big mountain biker, so he does solo trips to Moab all the time, but we came as a family this time. In fact, that's why I have a little peace and quiet in the room. My husband left at about 7:30 this morning for his mountain biking trip, and the kids, I've banished the kids to the absolute corner of the hotel room. They've got their AirPods in and they're playing Roblox. To many of you, that might mean nothing, but to a lot of you, it probably means something. Roblox is a thing. So yeah, that's my current situation in Moab, recording on the road, super legit podcaster. What can I say? Also, I wanted to mention that last week I saw You Hurt My Feelings, which is JLD's new movie that's out right now in theaters. I really liked it. I thought it was great. My husband, he's sort of a killjoy sometimes when it comes to movies in general, because he'll read all these reviews before we go. And he's like, I don't know, it's not sounding great. And I'm like, okay. I do like to listen to reviews sometimes. I don't know. You just have to take them with a grain of salt. I think that what he was telling me the reviews were for You Hurt My Feelings was kind of accurate, but kind of not. Look, it's not a Marvel movie. It's not going to be this fast-paced, high-action stuff. It's a very grounded, real story of like what happens in relationships sometimes, where you lie to spare feelings and you lie to be supportive because you love the person so much. So if you don't know, the synopsis of the movie is basically Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character has written her second book, and her husband has said he loves it, keeps telling her it's a wonderful book. She's sort of having trouble with her editor, or I'm sorry, her publisher maybe, to really give the book the attention it needs. And so she's kind of feeling, insecure about that. And meanwhile, her husband's just telling her, it's a great book. I love it. I love this book. You're a great writer. But then she overhears him. And this is all stuff that's in the trailer of the movie. So there's no spoiler alerts here. But anyway, in the movie, she overhears her husband saying how much he hates the book. So, there's a lot of layers there. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very well written. It's only like an hour and a half long, which I think is exactly the amount of time it needed to run for, because, there's no reason to make it longer. And so for what it's worth, I enjoyed it. I thought it was really, really good. JLD's performance is so great. She's a great actress, right? In this podcast, we mostly talk about her comedic prowess, but I am a true believer that to be a comedian and be really funny. You just have to be a really good actor as well, a comedic actor. You have to be just a good general actor, which she is. And so, my gosh, in the really vulnerable moments of the movie, she shines. I mean, she's just fantastic, and I really enjoyed her performance in the movie. I will say the guy who plays her husband, I recognize him. He was in The Crown. He played Prince Philip in the earlier seasons of The Crown when Queen Elizabeth was much younger and Prince Philip was much younger. He's a great actor. I think with the caliber of JLD's acting, no, I shouldn't say that, because he is a great actor. It's not like he was acting badly. I just didn't believe the chemistry between them, to be honest. The guy who plays her son, Owen Teague, I believe his name is. I apologize if I got that wrong, but just look it up on IMDb. He's a young actor. He's excellent. Oh my gosh, I've seen him in a couple movies now, and he is absolutely fantastic. But yeah, I will say, the husband didn't do it for me. I don't remember his name offhand, and I'm not going to do a real-time search at this moment because I need to get through this podcast. I'm in a hotel room. My kids are huddled in a corner. It sounds like I'm torturing them, but believe me, they have their iPads, they're playing Roblox, they're sitting next to each other, and they're loving it. So yeah, I do recommend You Hurt My Feelings for all of you JLD fans out there. I think it's worth watching. Going to the theater for it, I don't know. I totally get why people don't want to go to theaters now, because it's exorbitantly expensive and stupid. And I don't even want to go on that tangent, because if it's not a movie worth seeing on a big screen, you probably just shouldn't. I had no choice with You Hurt My Feelings because it's only been released in theaters. I probably would have streamed it if that was an option, but I will leave that up to you. That's your call, but I do recommend it. I'm sure that's not a surprise. I'm totally on brand with that. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention, because I sort of appreciated the comment. My husband was talking about how, well, first of all, in general, he thinks JLD is so cute, which she is, obviously. She's very physically cute and attractive and beautiful. I mean, however you want to say it. It's weird to call a grown woman cute, I guess. But my husband was saying how much he appreciates that she's one of these actresses in Hollywood who is just letting herself age, but taking care of herself and doing, just letting herself, letting her face show the signs of aging, but still, it's so much more about the energy and what kind of comes through for a person. And he's just like, she's still like so incredibly attractive to me, even more so because of that, even more because she's not, filling her face with Botox or whatever the people are doing nowadays. I'm not savvy enough to know all the secrets in Hollywood for why people's faces start looking like the Joker's. I'm not going to mince words there, but I just appreciated that my husband appreciates that, because guess what? I'm going to let my face age. I'm going to do all I can with non-invasive treatments. I say this now. Look, no judgment to people who do that. I know I have friends who do it, and I'm sure JLD maybe does some of that, but the point is she's not doing it to the extreme, I guess, is what my husband was really appreciating, which I appreciate as well. Let's normalize, I don't know, wrinkly skin. Let's normalize, not the most cut jawline into your 70s. I mean, because that's what really happens. And if people see it more, maybe it won't be so frowned upon in the society we live in. Okay, you guys, soapbox is gone, and let's get into this episode. Now, I blew it. I did not bring my coffee table book on this trip. So the synopsis for this episode I got from, I believe, the IMDb page for The Beard. And it's as follows. Elaine attempts to convert a homosexual man to heterosexuality. Kramer sets George up with a woman, and not having a photograph, it describes her to a police sketch artist. Jerry hooks up with a female officer who then has Jerry take a polygraph test on whether or not he's seen the show Melrose Place. This episode was written by Carol Leifer. Yay, female writer. All right, we start out in Jerry's apartment. Elaine and Jerry are at his table eating Chinese food, and he's pointing out to her how terrible she is with the chopsticks. She can barely get the food to her mouth. She's dropping food. She admits it. Yeah, I need a lesson. And then he sees something on the floor. Turns out she dropped her ballet tickets. Ooh, your ballet tickets. Have you ever been to the ballet? No, but I've seen people on tiptoes. That line makes me laugh so hard. Anyway, she tells Jerry she's going as a beard. And she explains to him that a friend of a friend, he's a banker, 30-ish, unbelievably gorgeous. Of course, he's gay. And he has a conservative boss who invited him to see Swan Lake at the Met with his wife. And this friend isn't sure that he's going to be accepted, for his orientation. So Elaine's going to join him as his date. Jerry's like, why are you doing this? Swan Lake at the Met. That's enough for Elaine to go. George buzzes, get it on with your bad self. That's just a little hint of the, I guess the vibe that George is giving in this episode. Kramer enters and he's excited about the Chinese food. Elaine asks Jerry if George is still wearing that toupee. Doesn't he realize how ridiculous he looks in that thing? Kramer thinks he looks fantastic. Oh, come on. Kramer never realized how attractive George is. He's a real looker, that one. George enters. Oh, does he enter with all sorts of swagger, just cannot point to his head enough. People. He does sort of this flourish for Elaine, kind of like a, hello, here I am. And she sort of mirrors it like, so what? Who cares? And she tells him, she goes, you look ridiculous in that thing. Oh, George says, or could it be that you're worried you may have missed the boat? Oh, Elaine says, I think they may have sutured that thing to your brain. Fine, George says, but, he feels with the toupee, he's a real player. He is now in the game. And Kramer tells him, I have this gorgeous friend who called me today. She's moving to the city, asked me if there's anyone he knows that she could meet, and now he can say George. Jerry's like, well, what about me? No, I think he's got you beat, buddy. I love the bluntness in this scene. George is excited. Hey, she's gorgeous, huh? And Kramer's like, yeah, the last time I saw her, she was. Do you have a picture? No. Well, I gotta see her, George says. And Kramer then thinks about his buddy who works as a police sketch artist. He could draw a picture of her. Oh, wow. George loves that idea. You think he'd do it? Yeah, I think he would. So they're getting ready to leave, and Kramer tells Jerry, hey, I'm going to pack up the rest of this Chinese food to give to a homeless person. My take on this scene, first of all, I just want to say this is a near perfect episode for me, but I'll get more into that in the final notes. But I just want you to know where I'm coming from when I'm commenting on this episode. I love this episode so much. And I love this scene. Everything from, Jerry starting out the scene, insulting Elaine's chopsticks skills. I mean, that just cracks me up. And how she's just like, doesn't even argue. She's like, I know, I need a lesson. This made me think about when I got into sushi kind of late, like in my 20s, maybe mid to late 20s. I really started getting into sushi and going to I'll fully admit, for all you sushi connoisseurs, I'm sure you will all just kind of throw up in your mouth a little bit. But I first tried sushi. It was supermarket sushi. I'm not going to lie. My parents bought it, I think. They were curious about sushi as well. So they had bought it from like the case, like the sushi case, which is better than like gas station sushi. Come on. But anyway, I think I was at my parents' house one time. This was after I'd moved out. And they were eating it with a fork, kind of cutting it up. I mean, again, just totally blasphemous when it comes to how you should eat sushi. But these were my Indian parents eating sushi for the first time, and or just with their fingers. So that's sort of what hooked me into it. I was like, this is really good. I get it now. I get why people like sushi. Granted, it was probably just a California roll or maybe just a simple tuna roll or whatever. But, that was everyone has to have their starter drug. And that was what it was for me for sushi. But then when I graduated to actually going to sushi restaurants, I did not realize, holy shit, they only provide you with chopsticks. Luckily, the first couple of times I went with my best friend in the world, Kavita, and she was a little bit more seasoned with the chopsticks, but I looked at her and I was like, I don't think I can do it with the chopsticks. And she started laughing. She's like, oh, so she gave me like a quick lesson, like Elaine needed the lesson. And I managed. I mean, granted, I wasn't with people who might have judged me. She was a safe space, a safe sushi space with my friend. But I was like, oh man. And I was like, do I ask for a fork? And she's like, no, don't ask for a fork. So funny. But yeah, I had like some high anxiety when I started going to sushi restaurants. I got the hang of it though. I'm still not great, but I can make my way through a sushi restaurant dinner. Full disclosure though, if I get some supermarket sushi or takeout sushi, I'm eating those rolls with my hands. Okay. Yeah, I just am. I don't care. No shame here. And look, I'm Indian. We ate rice with dal and curry and stuff. We ate that stuff with our hands, guys. Like, so it's my culture to eat with my hands, especially anything with rice. All right, back to the scene. Okay, her explanation of being a beard for Robert is perfectly done. I love it. Perfectly written, perfectly performed. Now, obviously, this is done for the audience, but it's also very believable that Jerry may not know what a beard is. So that, that's the whole reason we needed this explained. And it's exposition, but I think that JLD performs it so well that it's very believable that this is how you would talk to a friend naturally. And just how JLD says, Swan Lake at the Met. It's so great. I love when we have these moments of Elaine being, for lack of a better term, feminine, showing her feminine side. She wants to do these things. Maybe not so much feminine. I mean, there's definitely that, but there's also just like this classier, side to her than with the rest of the dudes. So I like that we see that side sometimes. All right. And y'all know how much I love a George and Elaine interaction. And this episode gives us some of the best interactions between the two of them. I love that she had no reservation to just sort of pop that balloon in the very beginning when he comes in, his toupee glee. She doesn't give a shit that he feels so good. She just has to say it to his face. You look ridiculous in that thing. And then George's swagger. It's too good. It's too good. Jason Alexander is absolutely masterful in this episode. It's just a performance that should be studied. I'm sorry. He's so good. Oh my gosh. And then that comment when he accuses her of being worried that she missed at the boat. Amazing. I do wish she had a better comeback, to be honest. The sutured that thing to your brain, it's not too good, but the mocking laugh is great. that makes up for it. All right, next we're in the street. Jerry, George, and Kramer are walking together. George is excited to see how this police sketch artists do what they do. He's always wanted to know. Kramer finds a homeless man and he gives him the food. And the guy is so thankful. And Kramer's like, hey, you're going to be here in an hour? Hey, where am I going? He says. Okay, good. And Kramer says, enjoy. All right, next we're at the police station. Kramer's buddy is drawing Kramer's friend. And Kramer's giving all these details. The eyes need to be more almond shaped, the lips fuller, poutier. Ooh, this is very exciting for George. He's very excited about the pouty. The drawing is finished and George comes over to see it. He is thrilled. You're right, Kramer. She is gorgeous. Jerry asks the artist, his name is Lou, about the officer across the station. Oh, that's Officer Tierney. Nice officer. You want to meet her? All right, the next week cut to Jerry, George, and Kramer walking back. George is still admiring the drawing and Jerry is excited to call that officer for a date. Nice to have the law on his side for a change. Kramer then approaches that homeless man and asks if he enjoyed the food. He says he did. And Kramer asks for the Tupperware back. The tone changes a little bit. The homeless guy says, I don't think so. He says Kramer should have told him he wanted it back. Well, with the piece of Tupperware, you just assume. Yeah, Kramer is not happy. All right, next we are at the ballet. Elaine is on her date. In the box, she's with Robert sitting next to her. And behind them are the Stevensons, his boss and boss's wife. Robert leans over to Elaine and really thanks her for doing this. Oh, she's happy to. She says you'd think by now people would be a little bit open-minded. Then Robert excuses himself to go to the bathroom. After he exits, Mrs. Stevenson leans forward. So, you and Robert? Yeah. Really? Yes, indeedy. Mr. Stevenson says he's surprised. Really? Why? No reason. Well, then Elaine goes on this little verbal run about how, oh, this didn't happen overnight. He's not exactly a one-woman kind of guy. No siree, Bob. He's typical in some ways. He likes his sports, but then he counters that with the side that we see here tonight. At the ballet or watching Miss Liza Minnelli belt out a few choice numbers. It's the two halves of his personality that make him so special. Robert returns and she has to exhale deeply after that. She says to him, "Hi, honey," when he sits down, and then goes in for a big smackaroony, big kiss. The actress in this scene is Georgianne Johnson. She plays Mrs. Stevenson, the boss's wife. She's appeared in movies such as Midnight Cowboy with, yes, Jon Voight, the actor. She's also been in Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman and the Fugitive TV series, among other things. And I think she's great. We can obviously see she's not convinced by Robert's beard here. I do think it's interesting that she's the one that's sort of leading the conversation and not the actual boss, between them and Elaine. I think we can see who's dominating the relationship. And then my take on the scene, I think it's a great scene. I love JLD here. We see a little bit of her nervous energy at the start of the conversation with the couple. I like how she's like, "Yes, indeedy." And then that monologue about Robert's interests and, doing her best to convince them is so great. It's just like that kind of nervous energy coming out in verbal diarrhea, especially that exhale she does at the end. It's so funny. She's like, "Oh God, I hope that was okay." And I love that kiss at the end. She's like, "I'm all in. I'm doing this." All right, next we're at Monk's. Elaine is telling Jerry what a great night she had with Robert. Did they suspect anything? No, she says, "I was a fantastic beard. I held hands. I called him honey." And Jerry teases and declares yet another talent of Elaine's posing as a girlfriend for homosexuals. It was just such a great night. Yeah, you said that already. Oh, I did? Yes. Oh. And Jerry sniffs it out. You like him? He's incredible. Yeah, I know, she says. Well, you're not thinking conversion, he says. Well, it did occur to her. And Jerry's like, you forget it. There's no chance he's going to change teams. It's not like a whim that they join their team. He's set with his team. And Elaine argues that, they have a good team. Sure, Jerry says, and explains, Robert can't play in our team because he's only good with his own type of equipment. But Elaine says they got along so great. Of course, Jerry says, you always get along great when there isn't a possibility of sex. No, Elaine insists she sensed something. She perceived a possibility, Jerry. Jerry says, well, you realize you're venturing in uncharted waters. I realize that. Are you that desperate? Yes, I am. My take on this scene, really fun scene. I love how proud of herself Elaine is about her beard performance. You can just tell she's like, oh, I nailed it. Jerry sniffing out her real feelings is such a great moment. And her sort of exasperated, he's incredible, and putting her head down reaction. It's so good. JLD is so skilled at this like mixed emotions acting. Like she cannot deny how much she's charmed and attracted to Robert, but she also, very much knows and realizes how kind of inappropriate it is and how implausible it is. And then I just have to give a shout out to Carol Lee for it's just fantastic writing. I love the whole team comparison, the equipment stuff. It's done so well, so just smart writing. I can't say it enough. The uncharted waters moment is so great. The way she says, I realize that. And then her admission of just being that desperate. I mean, you get it. Elaine cannot deal with another awful straight man. She's having no luck. She's going to try this seemingly impossible conversion because she just cannot handle these terrible straight guys that she's dating. Now, I wanted to talk about, if you listen to this other podcast I was a guest on, it's called the Spinster Life podcast. And the host, Amy, she brought up some of the cringiest moments that the Elaine Bennis character has on Seinfeld. And this was listed as one of the cringiest moments when she tries to convert a gay man. Now, I just wanted to give a little commentary on that because I really do believe. Now, I watched a lot of television in the 90s when I was a teenager, teenager, whatever you want to call it. Those kind of formidable, transformative years, I watched a ton of TV. So I saw the breadth of how homosexuality was handled in a lot of these, especially sitcoms. That was mostly what I watched. And I feel like, and I've read many articles and I've commented on this before, again, with supporting, supporting views from people in the LGBTQ plus community, saying that Seinfeld was actually one of the few shows that treated homosexuality with some respect. If you notice, with all of the times that they deal with homosexuality or it comes up in the show, the joke is never on the gay person. They're never punching down to the fact that someone is gay. The humor is always found in the pathetic nature of the straight character. So George or Jerry and now Elaine. Compared to other shows of that time, Friends, namely, like I've been watching a lot of Friends. My daughter's really into it. Friends handles it so poorly, and I've said this before, which is so surprising considering one of the co-creators of the show is a gay man, but whatever, we'll put that to the side right now. But like, it's always a joke. Being gay was always the joke on Friends. Like, oh, Chandler might be gay. Oh, what if it's a guy that likes Ross, one of his male students? Ha 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 ha. It's like, that's always a joke. The joke is being gay. But in Seinfeld, whenever this has come up, the joke is always the humor and the poking fun is at the principal characters who are straight, who have the issue with the homosexuality. And again, it's more about themselves. So in this case with Elaine, my interpretation is it's more about her desperate act. She's so desperate. Like, this is a commentary on how a lot of straight women, they've got that gorgeous gay man in their life who they could just, if they could, they would just want to be in a relationship with because of how well they get along with that. So I think it's more a commentary on the state of single women trying to find men that they can get along with. And yeah, I mean, I'm going to generalize here, but I have at least four gay men in my life who are so gorgeous, it kind of hurts. And I'm just talking physically, I'm just talking superficially here, but that matters. But anyway, I just wanted to give some commentary on that. I really think out of all of those shows during that time period, because remember, this is like almost 30 years ago, and we're still dealing with bullshit with people mistreating the queer community and all this stuff. So like the fact that Seinfeld always never made being homosexual a joke or punched down to that or made fun of that. It never was the joke. It was always kind of turning it around on those straight characters and their sort of attitude about it. And it was always a reflection about, how they had something wrong with themselves. With George and Jerry, it was their own insecurity, especially with George. With Elaine here, it's her pure desperation to just find a man. All right, moving on. We are at Jerry's apartment. Jerry's on the phone with Officer Tierney, talking about their date, deciding, no gun on the first date. I think that's a good decision. Kramer enters and is looking for Tupperware. And Jerry's like, well, I don't have any. Kramer is so annoyed. He just made a delicious casserole, but it's not going to keep because he doesn't have any Tupperware. Well, what about a plastic bag? Oh, you must be kidding. What's the difference, Jerry says. The patented burp, Jerry, that locks in the freshness. George enters. He's got a little pick and he's sort of fluffing the toupee. Tells Kramer that he spoke to Denise for 2 hours last night. Oh, she's nuts about you. Why didn't you two ever get together? Well, who's to say we didn't? Kramer walks away, leaving George with that thought. Jerry asks George, you talked to her. Did you describe yourself over the phone? Yes, I did. Did you tell her the truth? Yes. As you see it? As I see it. And Jerry wonders if he told her about his little hair hat there. No. Don't you think she can tell? Kramer interjects. No. She can't tell. It's a perfect match. Beautiful job. And Jerry's like, come on. I could spot that bird's nest 2 blocks away. And George points out, and I think he's right here. You're only saying that because you know me. And Jerry asks, well, have you noticed people staring at your head? I noticed people staring at my head because they like what they see. And Jerry's like, I think you should take it off or at least tell her about it. Kramer hates that idea. He never would have set them up if George was bald. And George is like, just relax, everyone. She will not know. I guarantee it. Kramer has to leave and go to the precinct. He's having lunch with Lou, and Jerry's like, oh, I'll split a cab with you. Then we see this quick scene on the street. Kramer and Jerry pass by that same homeless man, and Kramer apologizes to him about the whole Tupperware incident. And he puts a coin in his cup. Turns out it's that guy's coffee. All right, next we're at the police station. Officer Tierney needs some help with the lineup. The decoys didn't show up and asks Kramer, hey, quick $50, you want to be in the lineup? And he's very excited to do that, and he goes off with an officer. Then we have a quick scene of the lineup where Kramer is all smiles, standing there, turning the wrong way, dancing around. He is just having a ball as a decoy. All right, so the actress who plays Officer Tierney is Catherine Lanassa, and she's appeared in many TV series and films, among them Imposters, Truth Be Told, and The Campaign. I found this interesting. She's been married 3 times. Her first marriage was to Dennis Hopper, and second marriage was to French Stewart, who is also a Seinfeld alum. And what's most interesting, she's married to former Melrose Place star Grant Show. They've been married since 2012 and are still married. I just thought that was interesting. Here she is giving Jerry a polygraph about Melrose Place in this episode. And she's married to Grant Show, who I think was the hottest one in Melrose Place. Anyway, I don't know. I don't love her performance. It's kind of odd to me. I can't tell if this is just how she acts, because I really haven't seen anything else of hers. But her way of speaking is kind of odd when she kind of is like, a certain cast member of Melrose Place. Have you seen the show? Like, it's so weird to me. I'm just not a fan. I've always found it a little bit odd. All right, next we're in Monks. George is waiting for Denise, and she walks in. She's wearing a hat. He's so excited. We can hear his thoughts. He says, that's her. That's the face. They sit down at the booth, and he says, hey, take your hat off. Stay a while. Well, she does, and we don't see her take her hat off, but we see George's reaction, and he's definitely surprised, but not pleasantly surprised. The actress here is Joan Shekel, and look, I can't really comment too much on her performance. I think she's perfectly fine. I love the energy she comes with in the scene, when she walks into Monks. But I found this super interesting about Joan. She is the internationally renowned creator of what's called the technique, which is the most influential new approach to writing, directing, and filmmaking in Hollywood today. She's known as the, quote, director's guru. I was reading a little bit about what they said about the technique, what Joan created, and this is what they said about it. Joan's groundbreaking work challenges our cultural addiction to conflict and calls for a new storytelling paradigm that embraces feeling and meaning. Her innovations inform every level of the mise-en-scene, from writing, acting, directing, to visual style. She's worked on several films as a workshop director to teach and guide with the technique she created. Super interesting. I want to learn more about this technique. My goodness. It just was like raves and raves about what she created. And I love when we find out like amazing things like this about these bit players. Like, how cool is that? She just had like 4 seconds and oh shit. No. Okay. Sorry about that. My husband got back from his mountain biking trip. So I had to take a little pause. I thought he was going to text me when he was on his way back, so I'd be a little bit more prepared. But anyway, I'm back. So we were talking about Joan Shekel. I just want to wrap that up. Just love when we learn some really cool things about bit players. How cool. She is the creator of this like really revolutionary technique for creating content in Hollywood. And I am going to do some research on the technique. That's what it's called. The technique, trademark. All right, next we're at the police station. Jerry asks about the polygraph machine. And Officer Tierney says, yeah, it's a polygraph. It's what you civilians call a lie detector test. Officer Tierney says he wouldn't believe the famous people who have come through here. Really? A certain cast member of Melrose Place? Have you ever seen the show? Here's my impression again. Just watch it again and you guys let me know. Email me or comment. Isn't it weird? It's just it's a weird choice. Or I shouldn't say weird. I just don't love the choice. Anyway, when she mentions Melrose Place, Jerry sort of tenses up. It's okay, Jerry. You can admit it. I admit it. I've never seen it. And then she calls over to Lou. I think we should put him on the Polly. The Polly? Yeah. I think you've seen it. All right. Next, we are back at Jerry's apartment. Elaine has been informed about this lie detector test, and she could not be more amused. Melrose Place? Yes. I just didn't know you watched that, she said. You know, every time I mentioned it, you've never said anything or joined in the conversation. Well, maybe I was a little embarrassed, Jerry says. You mean this whole time you could have been talking about? And she names off all these Melrose Place characters. Yes, we could have discussed it. So why, she says, why were you so embarrassed? He's like, the point is I'm going to be taking this test and that needle's going to be going wild. This is so stupid, Elaine says. Why don't you just confess? It's too stupid to confess. Well, she says, what are you going to do? Jerry thinks, well, maybe I could beat the machine. Who do you think you are, Costanza? Wait a second, Jerry realizes. He has access to one of the best lying minds around. Meanwhile, Elaine has taken a sip of some juice she has just opened, and she says, this is terrible. Well, did you shake it? No. Well, you need to shake it. Well, she doesn't want to, okay? She's sick of shaking. You got to shake everything. And Jerry starts shaking. Oh, yeah, this is a real nuisance. George buzzes, and this time it's not, get it on with your bad self. It's more, yeah. Elaine goes over to the couch and tells Jerry she once again is going out with Robert and the boss and his wife. Oh, are you going to make the move? She says, yeah, she thinks she might. George enters. Jerry's very curious. Could she detect the toupee? That's an interesting question. How so? How so? I'll tell you how so. She's bald. What? Jerry and Elaine can't believe it, but no, she's bald. It was like looking at himself in a mirror. Well, maybe she got a haircut or something, Elaine says. Yeah, no one goes in and asks for the Larry Fine. And Jerry didn't realize that women could go bald. And Elaine says, yeah, it does happen, but they usually wear a wig. Kramer enters, and George just goes right in on him. You set me up with a bald woman. Bald? And Elaine can't help it. She has to point out the irony. You're rejecting someone because they're bald. So? You're bald. No, I'm not. I was bald. Ooh, and then Elaine goes for his head. Elaine, he says. And then they get into a physical altercation, and she rips off the toupee from his head, runs to the window. I don't like this thing, and here's what I'm doing with it, and tosses it out the window. George runs to the window after it, and Elaine is just so proud of herself. Then we see a quick scene on the street. The homeless guy finds the toupee on the ground and puts it on. My take on this scene, what can you say? It's one of the best scenes of the series. And I have to give it up to Jerry Seinfeld for his performance here. His embarrassed performance is so funny. Yes, like he's so embarrassed about Melrose Place. It's almost adorable. And I've always loved JLD's delivery of, this is so stupid. The small little aside of Elaine not wanting to shake the juice, it's like not necessary, but it's still funny. I just love how matter of fact she is when Jerry's like, well, did you shake it? No. She's like, didn't do it. Never going to do it. Hate doing it. Okay, so this scene contains easily one of the top George and Elaine moments of the series. Elaine blowing up about the toupee is on every highlight reel, and it's for a good reason. We just see how passionate Elaine is about not only this toupee, but what the toupee does to George's sort of vibe, his persona. You know, he turns into this total jerk. And I also love that George does not see the irony at all when she points it out. Do you see the irony here? What? You're rejecting someone because they're bald. And he's still like, so? Ugh. And that satisfied look JLD has at the end after, throwing out the toupee, that sort of little wiping hands motion is so fantastic. She just goes from one extreme to the other in like a matter of milliseconds, like screaming, enraged, and then just like, haha, yes. All right, next we're on Elaine's stoop. Robert and Elaine are discussing the date that they were just on with his boss and his wife, and how she started a fight on the date. And Elaine's like, yeah, I figured that's what couples do. And he says, you almost convinced me we were a couple. And Elaine looks at him all googly-eyed. Well, it was easy. Really. He says goodbye and goes to leave, but then she stops him. Do you want to go upstairs? And he gets kind of serious. Upstairs? Yeah. Upstairs? He hesitates, Elaine. And she asks, have you ever considered changing teams? But I'm a sharding... Oh. He's not a sharding shortstop. Oh, God. Can I talk? He says, but I'm a starting shortstop. If he's a sharding shortstop, we may never know, but definitely a starting shortstop. And she says to him, Robert, we need a shortstop real bad. My take on this scene, desperate Elaine. I love desperate Elaine. And I think we can also add in horny Elaine. Now, I can't say the word horny without thinking about another fantastic podcast called Tig and Cheryl, True Story. If any of you are fans, I'm totally binging this show. I have been for like the last 2 months. And I just recently listened to an episode where they talk about how they hate the word, both of them, Tig and Cheryl. It's Cheryl Hines and Tig Notaro, for those of you who may not be aware of this podcast. They both equally hate the word horny, which only makes both of them say it more in any episode that warrants it, and even in episodes that don't warrant it. So anyway, I don't hate the word horny, and I think it's very appropriate to say it in this little scene. She's desperate, but I think she's desperate because she's horny, and then she's horny because she's desperate. I mean, chicken and the egg, But anyway, we see both types of Elaine here, especially we can tell she's horny by the way she says real bad at the end. That delivery is just JLD perfection. All right, next we are at Monk's. George is telling Jerry that Elaine throwing out that toupee was the best thing that ever happened to him. He feels like himself again, totally inadequate, paranoid, neurotic. It's a pleasure. He also decided, he's going to keep seeing the bald woman. After all, the scalp looked good. And Jerry points out that he's had sort of a religious awakening. He's like a bald again. Great line. Jerry asks George how he can beat the lie detector. And George says he can't help him. It's like asking Pavarotti, teach me to sing like you. Well, Jerry has to go take the test. He can't believe he's doing this. But then George does have some parting words of wisdom for him. It's not a lie if you believe it. Oh my gosh, real quick, I have to backtrack a little bit. The last scene with Elaine, do you want to go upstairs? So now Elaine totally understands what that means. If you remember with Whatley, she didn't think it was a big deal when she was like, do you want to go upstairs? Because she wanted to check on the label maker that she thought he might have regifted. So she kind of doubts Jerry and George, saying, well, of course he wants to get it on with you because you said, do you want to go upstairs? Like you're Mae West. But I just like now that she gets it. And that's the exact words she uses for Robert. All right. Okay. So moving on. We're on the street now, and Elaine and Jerry bump into each other. She gives Jerry the news. I turned him. He defected. And now Jerry gives Elaine a get out shove. Wow. That's a rare one. And he asks, how did you do that? Because I'm a woman. Ba 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 boom. Chicka boom. Chicka boom boom boom. There's a little hip dance there. And he's like, wow, Elaine, you know what you've done? You've given hope to every woman out there who's ever said, too bad he's gay. She says it's a lesson for the kids. Anything is possible. Jerome, I've hit the jackpot. The perfect man. Nothing but sex and shopping. My take on this scene, some amazing physicality with the little boom chicky chicky dance. I love it. And we just really need this scene to find out that Robert did defect for her. And I love JLD in this scene. She's so cute as her little giddy self. All right, next we're at the police precinct. Kramer is doing another police lineup. He's really getting into this, and he's sort of trying to sway opinion. He's sort of nodding to the guy to his left, kind of going like, oh, this guy's the bad one. Then we cut to Jerry, hooked up to the polygraph machine. This guy is asking him normal questions like his name, his address, and then he launches into the Melrose Place questions. Jerry is trying to convince them he's not lying, but the needle is jumping quite a bit. We can see it. But the question that breaks Jerry, did Jane sleep with Michael again? That one was way too much for Jerry. He freaks out and goes into what happened on the show. Oh, that Jane, she just makes me so mad. He rips off all the sensors and exits. Next, we're at Jerry's apartment, and we find out right away that Robert went back. But I thought everything was going well. The sex, the shopping. And Elaine tries to break it down for Jerry. Here's the thing. As a woman, she doesn't have the necessary access to the equipment, especially compared to those who own the equipment and have access to it 24 hours a day, their entire lives. And furthermore, she can't be expected to have the same level of expertise. Jerry's like, yeah, you really can't compete with that. Yeah, I guess I really never stood a chance. Well, Jerry says there's always a place for you on our team. Yeah, thanks. Is Melrose Place on? Yeah, in a few minutes. George enters with a bit of urgency, looks a little concerned, and Jerry says, don't worry, it hasn't started yet. Elaine tells George how proud she is of him. She really admires him for what he's done. Oh, that's great. You hear that, Jerry? Elaine's proud of me. What? Well, turns out he got rejected by a bald woman. A woman with no hair and no prospects dumped him. Kramer enters and he says, apparently she likes a slimmer guy. Kramer doesn't mince words. He says, well, you blew it by taking that piece off. You really blew it. And you, he says to Elaine, had to ruin it for him. Elaine's like, I didn't ruin anything. He looked like an idiot and it made him act like a jerk. Jerry shuts everyone up. Shut up. Because Melrose Place is starting. We hear the theme music of Melrose Place and everyone's sort of, grooving to it. Oh, that Michael, I hate him. He's just so smug. There is a tag to the episode. Kramer is in yet another lineup, and he knows all the guys by now. He knows the decoys and saying hi to them. One of the non-decoys is a guy that's been there a few times, and Kramer's not happy. You better straighten up and fly right, buddy boy. Turns out behind the glass, the homeless guy is the one helping police. He's been an eyewitness to a jewelry store break-in. So the officer asks him, do you recognize anyone there? And he fingers Kramer immediately. I recognize him anywhere. So officer tells Kramer to step forward. Me? All right, my take on the scene. This is one of the best written scenes of the series. Elaine explaining why Robert went back is just brilliant. And here again is why I think this was always handled pretty well. It's not like Robert, defected for months on end or whatever. It's like, I feel like Robert may have just had like this lapse in judgment for a night and then quickly realized whoever it is, doesn't matter if it's a beautiful woman like Elaine, vaginas just gross him out. So I think it just, didn't last long. And besides, she probably didn't know what the hell to do with this penis because she doesn't have access like he does and his team does. So I think, again, handled so well. I like that it was just a quick turnaround back to him playing for the other team. I think that's key to this episode working. And again, we get choked up Elaine. Yeah, thanks. So great. Never get tired of it. I've said it before and I'll say it again. When the cast all ends up together, like in the end scene of the episode, it just makes for a better episode. All of that visual of them all on the couch and in the chair, watching Melrose Place, grooving to the theme song. I can truly say that is a memory that has been tattooed in my brain from when I saw it. Like I know where I was sitting in my living room watching that and just being so like almost giddy and delighted in 1995, just being like, oh my God, this is so crazy. I love this so much because it's so out of the blue, unexpected for this crew, these four people to like be into this show. And especially too, it was rare for the Seinfeld show because they made a special effort not to be into anything that was too popular at the time, so that this show would remain relevant for years on end, for decades even. They didn't want to call out culturally popular things at the time, but they threw that aside for this episode, and it really works. Now, I never watched Melrose Place. I couldn't get into it. I was a big 90210 fan. So for a lot of you probably out there who don't know, Melrose Place was a spinoff of Beverly Hills 90210. And I was a devout 90210 watcher. But I remember trying to watch Melrose Place. I think I was just too young for it. It was like an older set of people. They're all living on their own in Melrose Place. That was the name of the apartment complex and whatever. So, yeah, it just wasn't my thing, but it was huge. It was so huge, especially obviously around this time. Definitely younger people today wouldn't get this reference. I think people could still, just with the context of it, appreciate what they're doing here. Maybe today it would be like watching, I don't know, the Kardashians or one of those Real Housewives show. Like, it's like a guilty pleasure type thing. And what makes it work even better, this whole Melrose Place thing work like perfectly, is that it's Jerry who's the most into it. I mean, that's the key to what makes this amazing and so funny. The one you'd expect the least, like Jerry would never be into the show, but like the fact that he's like so into it, shutting everyone up, shut up, Melrose Place is on. It's only the theme song, like he needs to hear it. It's so funny. All right, I'm going to take a quick break and I will see you on the other side. This Pride Month, we recognize all of the progress made in the queer community thanks to countless sacrifices and battles fought throughout history. But we also cannot ignore how much more needs to be done. Unfortunately, there are still people in this country who believe in hostile legislation to strip the rights from this beautiful community. That's where starting Shortstop Beard Care comes in. If you live in one of these conservative areas and you have a supportive beard helping you keep your secret, pamper them with some Starting Shortstop Beard Care products. Keep your beard moisturized with a variety of beard balms for your next appearance at the Bigoted Boss's Clam Bake. Is your beard getting a bit scruffy around the edges? Then gift them a Starting Shortstop grooming kit, complete with comb, scissors, and tweezers to keep your homophobic grandparents quiet. Need to care for your sensitive beard? Well, Starting Shortstop offers a variety of unscented beard butters to prevent embarrassing flakes. That'll keep your narrow-minded pickup truck flag-waving, let's go Brandon chanting, selective Bible-quoting neighbor in the dark. Visit Starting Shortstop Beard Care today at www.noreallyvaginasAreGreat.beard or at www.noreallyIcan'tgetenough.penises.beard, depending on your orientation. For a limited time, you can choose a free gift with purchase, either the Liberace travel kit or the Eleanor Roosevelt tote bag. Starting Shortstop Beard Care, because apparently God hates you. And we're back. All right, let's go right into Greg's Sack Lunch. Greg is our most dedicated contributor, and every week we are blessed, yes, blessed, with his thoughts about every episode. So first in Greg's Sack, he talks about his favorite scene and Elaine moments. Greg says, the first scene where Elaine, Kramer, and Jerry are discussing George's toupee, and then when George enters, Elaine just calls him out, cracks me up. When George says she may have missed the boat, and Elaine goes on to insult him back with, I think that maybe they sutured that thing to your brain, all while sarcastically laughing, is brilliant. She's insulting him, and he's responding in the same exact way, but it's all so phony, until later. JLD and Jason Alexander playing off each other is the absolute best thing that ever happens on this show, and I can never get enough of it. They usually have separate storylines, so when we get them together, it's a rare treat, and every single time, it's excellent. Yeah, George and Elaine, that combo just never fails. I think we disagree a little bit. I do, like I said, wish her comeback was a little bit better, but the performance and the, like the way they're talking to each other, it just makes it work and it makes it hilarious. Greg goes on to say, Elaine's beard story, while the title of this episode almost takes a backseat to her intentions with George, at least comedically. George is basically living a lie with his hair, just like Elaine's fake boyfriend is living a lie with his sexuality. So I get what they were thinking putting these two stories together, along with Jerry lying to the policewoman. Nobody is being their authentic selves except within the foursome. The best part of Elaine's story here is when she thinks she turned the guy and she does the dance while saying, "'Cause I'm a woman, ba 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 boom." I love when she's full of herself, and that little dance brings me joy. And then it all falls apart so quickly for her, and we ultimately get verge of tears Elaine again when Jerry says, "There's always room for you on our team." And she says, "Thanks." Kramer had converted a lesbian before. I was surprised they hadn't brought that up when she was basically trying to do the same thing here. Holy shit, Greg. I totally forgot about that. Shame on me. That's right. Yeah. Okay. So I sort of have to amend that Seinfeld was perfect when it handled homosexual storylines, because I guess, Susan sort of went back and forth too. But again, that doesn't mean anything also, because it's not necessarily conversion. Maybe these ladies were bisexual. Maybe they were polyamorous. Maybe they don't really define their sexuality. So, all that stuff now is a little bit more fluid as we understand it today in 2023. But back to your point, yes, I think that could have been a really good opportunity to have Kramer impart some wisdom, like maybe, giving her tips on how to do it. Oh my gosh, now my mind is racing with all this stuff. You're so right, Greg. I'm kind of mad at myself for not thinking about that. I'm going to blame Moab. I'm just going to blame, being here in Moab as this distraction. But also give you all the credit, Greg, because you deserve it. Damn it. Missed it. Greg says next, all of this aside, there is one scene that makes this episode legendary. It's when Elaine chases George and rips his toupee off. Her anger as she says, "I don't like this thing, and here's what I'm doing with it," and her subsequent joy. He should have never poked her nose. Oh yeah, that was the wrong move. I was bald. Boop. That was the final straw for her. This is arguably the most memorable George and Elaine moment of the entire run of the show, and they performed it perfectly. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. You were completely right. And I'm still distracted by the fact that I did not think about Kramer. The opportunity for Kramer to give her tips on how to... Okay, I got to move on. All right, next in the sack is Greg's scene swap idea. He says, Kramer, per usual, has the most disposable storyline. Ooh, I like that. Disposable is a really good way to describe it. The whole giving up the Tupperware to the homeless guy is so throwaway. And even Jerry's story with the Melrose Place cop I could live without. What? George's hair and Elaine's bearding are what make this episode so good. I was alive in this era, but never once saw Melrose Place. So 25 years later, I wonder if this whole idea of Jerry hiding his love for the show holds up. At least they had Elaine somewhat involved in the conversation about it, and the fact that they all love the show is cute, but nowadays I don't think people hide their guilty pleasures so much. Something about all this feels very dated, and not just the fact that they watch a TV show when it airs. Boy, times have changed. Oh, that's so funny you feel that way, Greg. Or not funny, it's just interesting. Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts of this episode. I think because, again, I was alive in the era. I mentioned I didn't really watch Melrose Place, but I understood the sort of cultural impact it had. It was sort of, the big show at the time. People loved to watch it, but I don't think it was known as like a guilty pleasure. This is a guilty pleasure specific to Jerry. And like I said, I think for me, it really works because it's Jerry who loves the show. It's like, imagine your most cynical, kind of above everything friend watching the Kardashians or watching one of the awful Bachelorette, Real Housewives shows. I mean, that's funny, so I think, to your point, probably people wouldn't really get this today. Probably doesn't hold up unless you're familiar with this time period and this show, Melrose Place. But I don't know. For me, like I said, I have a special place in my heart for it because I literally remember seeing that last scene of all of them grooving to the Melrose Place music. And I knew that theme song too, even though I didn't watch the show. Again, it was like so ubiquitous in the culture at the time that you didn't have to really watch it to know the theme song. And so like, yeah, I just, for me, I thought it was such a brilliant choice to have this be this common bond for these four people who you would never think would watch a show like this. But to each their own. Different strokes. Another great show. Was it? I don't think that one would hold up very much either. All right, finally in Greg's sack are his extra thoughts. He says, this episode works so well because we get the main four together for multiple scenes and there's a lot of crossover. And them all watching Melrose Place, though a very dated reference, is almost endearing at the end. They can give each other bad advice, mock each other, and downright argue, but at the end of the day, this is their friend circle. One last thing. Kramer's stories are usually throwaway, and I find him more just a physical goof there for our dumb amusement. But I must say, Michael Richards is brilliant physically, even if the physicality is more subdued. His scenes in the suspect lineup are so funny to me. His faces and gestures can't be written so much as he just delivers them in his way. I know he had his scandals, and I'm not excusing what he did or said, but he is really damn funny, and nobody else could have played Kramer. Oh, yeah, you said a mouthful there. Your comments about his physicality and his, physical goof kind of persona, it brings me back to, I think, something I've mentioned on this show before about a tendency, I think, a lot of people who maybe aren't, familiar with comedy or aren't students of comedy like I kind of profess myself to be. They kind of throw away physical comedy as not real art, but it is so fucking hard, and not just on your body, but just to pull off convincingly. And yeah, people like Michael Richards, and Elaine, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, people who can do physical comedy convincingly. People don't understand how difficult that is. I mean, that takes some real talent. So I've never agreed with people kind of discounting a physical comic, like someone who's just, really good at physical comedy, because that is just as hard as delivering a comedic dialogue in the perfect way as well. Delivering physical comedy in the perfect way, that is hard, if not harder, because you're literally probably hurting your body as you do it. So I've always appreciated physical comedy. I mean, I grew up watching reruns of Three's Company, and John Ritter. I mean, it's just, I think that is really where my love of physical comedy just was developed. I mean, I just loved him, and everything he did physically was so funny because it looked so real. I mean, when you see bad physical comedy, and believe me, being in the improv world, you see a lot of bad physical comedy, people just not doing it convincingly, it dies, and it kind of sucks the energy out of the scene because it's so bad. But man, if people can pull that off, that is a special and rare talent. And I like the way you put that, Greg, where, we see them all at the end, and it is endearing. I think I've gone on and on about that enough, but yeah, there's something very sweet. Yeah, this is their friend circle. I mean, you can argue that Elaine assaulted George earlier in the episode and threw away what had to have been a super expensive toupee. But in the end, this is what friendship's all about, right? Sitting around watching Melrose Place. Thank you so much, Greg, for your thoughts. We always love hearing what you have to say about the episodes. And now it's time to close Greg's sack lunch. All right, now moving on to my favorite Elaine moments. Oh, there's so many to choose from. I love that. I'm going to choose when she's talking to Jerry about him liking Melrose Place. I just amused Elaine, the way JLD plays it in that scene. I just can't get enough of that. Melrose Place? And it's really also because of Jerry's performance in that scene. I'm so delighted by it. And the way, again, that delivery of, this is so stupid. Oh, it's wonderful. A close second is the scene in Monks when she admits she is so attracted to Robert. I love that scene. And then I think third, I've got three here, would be in the box at Swan Lake, going on that little verbal rant of what makes Robert the special guy that he is. And my final notes for this episode. Again, it's one of the best episodes of the series, in my opinion. Everyone's plot is really well done. I love all the dovetailing, the crossover of everything. It's so well written. No one is left out of anyone else's plot. I mean, I guess no one's really involved in the homeless guy thing with Kramer, but I don't know. I don't even know if I just feel like Kramer is sort of the character at large in this episode. He's sort of just everywhere, involved in everyone's storylines. But to Greg's point, I'm going to bring it up again, even though it's making me angry inside. There could have been some delicious moments between Kramer and Elaine and some advice giving about how to get Robert to convert. And again, the Melrose Place connection with all of them is the best. I love everything about it. And I really don't have any scene swap ideas, just a scene addition. Kramer, Elaine talking about conversion. Okay. All right, that's the last time bringing it up. And with that, I think that's all I can say about the beard. Please make sure to follow Hot and Heavy on social media. On Instagram, it's at Hot Heavy Elaine. On TikTok, it's at Elaine Bennis Podcast. And if you'd like to email me, please do with any thoughts or questions. ElainePodcast@gmail.com. That's ElainePodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.